Ladies and gentlemen, our forum and live stream will begin in 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Our forum and live stream will begin in 5 minutes. Please find your seats. Candidates, please make your way to the front and take your seat. Our forum and live stream will begin in 2 minutes.
Oh, careful.
Nice trip, right?
Well, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the historic Westminster Grange Hall in the heart of Westminster. I'm going to start a little bit out of order with a huge thank you to Tom Quinn. He's the owner of Battle for Heaven. It's a sound company. He's generously provided us with the sound system today, the cameras for the live stream, so you can watch the recording later on, see yourself, and our digital timing system that you'll see here. Please give him a big round of applause. We'd like to welcome our online viewers, and in fact, candidates, if you have supporters out there watching, you can go ahead and wave to them now. The live stream can be found on our website, theheartofwestminster.org, and like I said, it's being recorded, so you can go back and watch it at your leisure, okay? We'll give you a quick demonstration of the timing system. Tom, could you give me 3 minutes? There we go. Okay. All right. This type of event takes a lot of volunteer effort and donations. We need to thank our co-sponsors, Observatory Heights Homeowners Association. Anybody here from homeowners? There we go. The Jefferson County League of Women Voters. We've got some members here today. Thank you. Our refreshments today are provided by Creative Corner Coffee. They're just 2 doors to the west, so please stop by after the event and visit with them. If you see Kathleen or Patricia today, they'll have their aprons on. Thank them for the yummy treats. A little history about the Westminster Grange Hall. This organization received our charter in 1910, so 1 full year before the city started. This building is actually where the city voted for articles of incorporation. We've been an active community organization since that time in this very same building. Everything important that happened in the city happened in this building. The city council met here. It was the voting precinct. The high schools had class here. The boys played basketball in this hall. It was a center for performing arts with plays and talent shows. The community met here for potluck dinners. This organization began the hometown Christmas celebration, and in fact, their early members, Doc and Laura Shipman, were the ones that planted the hometown Christmas tree right across the street here. So, and that tree is over 100 years old. So a lot of history has taken place within these walls, and today we're going to make a little more history. The Heart of Westminster was started in 1982 by local involved residents who shared a passion for this community. They included the former mayor, city councilors, a state representative, and prominent citizens. The vision was to create an organization that would celebrate the area's 150 years of rich history by preserving its unique character. We do this by promoting our neighborhood, community, and businesses, by informing our residents, business owners, and visitors of the local issues, events, and resources, and advocating to address local concerns and facilitate interaction with good communication with local, county, and state and elected officials. We continue to do this with volunteers, memberships, and most importantly, donations. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today and other events that have taken place down here, please consider a membership and/or donation to help support these efforts. Well, I'll keep going then. Just a quick overview now of the candidate forum guidelines. The candidates received these a few weeks ago so that they could review them. So the forum style, the candidates are seated from left to right, your left to right, and I apologize, that's not a political affiliation pun. They appear from your left to right in the order that they appear on the Adams County and Jefferson County combined ballots. They'll answer questions from the moderator only. They won't engage with another candidate. They'll have 3 minutes for an opening statement, self-introduction, and their reason for running. The timer will count down from 3 minutes down to 0, and then it'll start to flash red as it counts up from there. That's for opening statements. The audience questions, and if you want to submit a question, all the questions that they'll be given here are submitted on the yellow cards that have been handed out there. So raise your hand if you'd like to submit a question. The other thing that we do, too, is we gather those questions up, and we compile them afterwards, and then that'll be published on our website, Facebook page. We'll submit them to the candidates after the fact that they can answer those questions if they want to. Let's see here. Questions can be directed toward a specific candidate. However, all candidates will be given an opportunity to answer the same question if they choose. And the answer order can begin from that named candidate, and it'll rotate through the list, but it's the sole discretion of the moderator. And the closing remarks today will be 1 minute. So we're looking at probably about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. So I think we're all set for that. As audience members, we'd ask that you be respectful of the moderator. the candidates and your fellow attendees, and please refrain from applause during the forum, as there will be time at the conclusion to do that. Any interruptions limit the number of questions that we can get to. One other reminder, the acoustics in the hall are great, so please avoid any conversations in the hallway, or the entry, or the kitchen area there. The sound really carries. So if you need to have a conversation, we just ask that you would step outside. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our guest moderator. She is the president of the Jefferson County League of Women Voters, Christina Manthe.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I'm Christina Manthe, and I am the president of the Jefferson County League of Women Voters. And I'd like to welcome you all to the 2023 Westminster Candidate Forum. We would like to thank the Heart of Westminster for allowing us to participate in this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that has worked since our inception in 1920 to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation at local, state, and national levels. The goal of the forum is to present the views of the candidates in a fair, nonpartisan setting so that you, the voters, can make an informed decision. This forum is being recorded, as we noted earlier. The forum is not only videotaped, live streamed, and recorded and posted to the Heart of Westminster website and social media, it will also be posted on the League website and our social media and YouTube site, and also on Vote 411, which is a League resource for election information. I'd like to remind everyone that private recordings are not allowed. All candidates today are candidates at large, and we have invited all candidates to attend. And the candidates we have here today are Christine Ireland, Jessica Carmelia, Claire Carmelia. I'm sorry, I'm reading the first name too. I apologize. Jeff Jones, Amber Hott, Karen Clavity, Bruce Baker, Scott Schilling, Paul Page, Timothy Pegg, Rich Seymour. Thank you all for taking the time to come today. The views expressed during this forum will be those of the candidates, not the views of the Jefferson County League of Women Voters or the Heart of Westminster. We take no stand supporting or opposing any candidates. Now then, each of you will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, 1 minute to answer each question, and 1 minute for closing. We would like, Christine, would you like to begin with your opening statement?
Are we starting?
Yes.
Good morning. I'm Christine Ireland. I've lived in Westminster for 37 years. My husband and I moved to Westminster right out of college from Brigham Young University, where I have a degree in retail management / merchandising. I worked in retail prior to having my family. I currently serve as an organist and pianist at my church, and I was a genealogist specialist for the last 8 years. I teach piano to all ages and abilities, and I love to share my talent and change people's lives, because my teacher did that for me. I served on my HOA for 5 years as a treasurer, trying to keep costs down and using creativity to avoid unnecessary spending. And we had very limited due increases in those 5 years, like 5% the last year because of the water rates in our city. I also was a member of the Water Warriors. I was a leader of that, trying to get the city to lower our water rates, which had gone up 80% in 3 years. Since our new city council has been on, we've lowered it 40%, but we have high sewer rates and other things that have kept it higher than we would like it. And it's continuing to increase 4.5% a year for the next 10 years to pay for the new water treatment plant. I partner with my husband in launching our own business. He invented a year-round sled, which you can use on grass and snow. And we've had it on the David Letterman Show, Steve Harvey Show, and Family Fun magazine. And we've been to the toy show for many years, and that's why we've been marketing it. I have 5 children. all of which are college graduates and are contributors to society. None of them are living with me right now. And I also have 11 grandchildren, which are a joy to my life. I wasn't planning on running for office, but I don't like the direction we're headed. I think we are using taxpayer money frivolously, and I think there's ways to successively cut spending in our city. I think our water rates are still too high, and I think that's because we spend too much money. I don't like the general attitude of our city employees and city council that think that we are endless money pits and we can afford any dream that they have for us. I'm a proponent of wards and districts. I think after walking as a water warrior that there's specific things that our city in different areas are concerned about. And I think there'd be better representations if everyone had a representative in their area. My husband and I did a data analyst study and had a proposal to put on the ballot this year, but instead we have a survey, so I don't know if we'll ever be able to accomplish our goal of getting wards and districts. I am fully aware of the inflation and the taxes we are all burdened with. If you elect me, I promise I will treat the city's money like it is yours
Thank you.
and mine.
Claire, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Or,
It was
Christine, I'm
trying to
sorry.
ways to solve problems with spending unnecessarily. I will be
Christine,
serving
thank
for
you
the
very
people,
much.
And I hope you will give me a vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Sorry, the timer seemed to have gone a little wacky for a moment there, so
I have 19 seconds left.
my, ap-
Negative 19.
nee. My apologies. Claire, your opening speech, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Carmelia, and I am someone who is deeply committed to their community, as I do consider it in many ways an extension of my family. I have a background in environmental studies, which I would love to apply to issues concerning the city, including our air quality, including clean and affordable water, and including land management, land and resource management, and protecting our parks and open spaces. By day, I am an information and technology project manager. What I do is bring different stakeholders with different missions together and collaborate to find common solutions that work for all and deliver these implementations within time, budget, scope. And what I'd really love to do is see some of the projects in the city completed. And so I would like to take a look behind the scenes and find out what the inefficiencies may be and what can we do to really get those projects rolling and maybe bring them into scope. I am someone who enjoys volunteering with the Action Center, with PSR Colorado on climate action plans, and doing food, clothing, and back-to-school supply drives. I do this because in many ways my community raised me. I am a former foster adopt child, and the decisions of local courts and judges and social workers and foster parents have shaped my life, and I deeply understand how local decisions can affect individuals and families. I am here to pay this back. I enjoy serving the public, and I am deeply committed to my community and to collaborating and finding solutions that really meet the needs for all of us. With that said, some of the items I would really like to concentrate on are the local economy. I would like to take a look at what can we do to streamline efficiencies for small businesses. How can we make it easier for them to open up? How can we incentivize small businesses to move into Westminster so that we can enjoy their shopping and entertainment, which we cannot do until projects are finished and they can move in? How can we make it easier for them to renew their licenses? Speaking with many folks around the city, I've heard this is somewhat of a struggle. And what can we do to better enjoy our spaces so that we have more room for families and children to enjoy without necessarily having to pay to go to a restaurant? How can we create more neighborhood spaces that are safe and family-friendly, such as libraries, farmers markets, more community-oriented areas? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Jeff, your speech?
Hi, I'm Jeff Jones. I've lived here for over 30 years. I've worked for the city for 40 years. I was a city employee for 40 years, 35 as a police officer, and I rose to the rank of commander. I retired in 2022. I still deeply care about this city. I believe in responsible, sustainable, and common sense government. I want this city to be safe, prosperous, and a beautiful city. I've watched it change and grow over the years, and I still want to be a part of that. I'm a big core services priority person. That must be taken care of first. One of the things that I've done to get my name out there, a lot of candidates haven't, is I've walked many doors. You may have gotten my door hanger. I've done 15,000 of those so far, 12,000 just me alone. And one of the other things that kind of solidified why I want to be on city council is I received this door hanger on my door, and many of you have. And one of the things I'd like to bring up is when you enter politics, you want to try to spin the message or spin the narrative. And this is a candidate of 3, which they call slates. So I guess you have to like all 3 candidates in order to vote for them. A couple of things that I'd like to just point out on here that is kind of a spin on this, that when you look at these, it really doesn't make sense. There's a lot of water issues on here, but it doesn't explain all of it. And I encourage you to go on the city website and to look for other things that will explain some of these. Look on January 23rd, 2023 city council meeting, and it will explain how we got to a water treatment plant, how we saved $100 million, how we got to water rates. Another one is the ward system, which has been mentioned, and how they have a specific ward system that they want. Go on the the July 31st study session and fast forward to 2 hours and 39 minutes and listen to that, watch that message. They only wanted one ward system, their ward system. Ultimately, after it was discussed, the city manager discussed it with them, and one counselor voted not to even allow you to have a ward system. Another one here is to cut staff. They want to lower salaries. I've been there. When you cut salaries, you cut staff, you cut services. And I remember as a PD employee at one time, one of the counselors here stated he wanted to cut the SWAT team, he wanted to cut the drug enforcement unit, he wanted to cut animal management. How can that be a safe community like it says on the front of this? This is one of the reasons I'm running.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Amber?
Hi. First, I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out of a Saturday morning to come listen to us today, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us today. My name is Amber Hott, and I'm running for Westminster City Council because I understand a lot of what people in our community are facing. I found out I was pregnant at 15 years old, and at the time, my mom was feeding my sister and I with food stamps and food from the local food bank. And we didn't have health insurance because we couldn't afford it. The night my son was born, his father was in jail for domestic violence, and I have pictures of being 15 years old holding my brand new baby with bruises on my face. By 16 years old, the only family I had in Colorado was my infant son. And it was our community and social safety nets is how we survived. I'm very, very lucky. I got to get my associate's degree off a low-income grant, and then I went on to get to study mental health at Regis University, where I got my bachelor's of science. I am one of the 2% of teen moms that have gone on to get their bachelor's degree, and I don't say that as a pat on the back for myself. I say that as that's an issue, that we don't think that teen moms deserve an education. And we used to have a teen mom program in the high school in Westminster, and that was cut years ago. The reason being that teen moms usually don't go to college. It's not because many of us don't want to. I do think that if I was in that situation today, I don't think I'd be where I am, because it's even harder now than it was then, and it was very difficult then. I've gone on for my occupation. I work in the state senate as a legislative aide, and so I understand what it takes to write good policy and what it takes to make good decisions for our community, which means a lot of bringing people to the table, making sure that any decisions that we're making, that anyone who's going to be affected is brought into those conversations, and is making sure that we are making decisions collaboratively. And as somebody who has worked on bipartisan bills, I can tell you I've worked with aides and senators on both sides, and so I feel like I can get along with anyone. We can always find areas of commonality. I see it's become unaffordable to live here. I'm very glad I got to raise my kids here, but people at all stages of life are having a more difficult time because it has become unaffordable. And so I'd like to do what I can to help our citizens, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Karen?
Hello, my name is Karen Calavity. I've been a resident of Westminster for about 13 years. I was born in Colorado, and I lived in Denver for most of my life. But during the recession, the 2010-2012 recession, I lost my home. I was in the industry. I worked with home builders, contractors. I'm a landscape architect and site planner by profession, and I was in that profession of home builders, but the banks and the home builders basically caused that recession, and I was a casualty of it, like many people are today. The homelessness situation is a direct result of some of the bad policies and planning during that time. And I'm very concerned that we're depending on home builders and investment fund operators and consultants to try to fix this problem that I basically feel was created by the home builder and banking communities. In Westminster specifically, I'm seeing large pieces of land being so-called developed with very substandard construction and planning standards. And this especially hits home with me because I worked for so many years with developers and home builders to do things right, to give space, to include parks, include amenities in communities. And now we're seeing this shortcutting of livable and quality life just so that we can allow the developers to turn this all into high-density housing with no parks, with very little yards. And if we're going to be housing a lot of people, we need to do it in a very sustainable way. We cannot continue using up land and water as if it's an unending resource. We do have more people, but we also have to be careful of our natural environment. I'm a proponent of the 30 by 30 strategy that says we need to set aside 30% of our land for open space, for wildlife habitat, for just resiliency, climate resiliency, and not build it all out in the most dense way possible. So from my point of view, I feel as though my background in this field would be very beneficial in reining in some of what I consider the bad development that's not even affordable. Right here on the Westminster farm, these developers have been given the go-ahead.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
Well, hi there. Halfway through. I'm Bruce Baker, and of course, I'm a known quantity. Okay. In my view, we hold in our hands the destiny of Westminster. This election holds the destiny of Westminster. The current council is on the verge of taking on $150 million of debt, and it's being taken on without voter approval because it's in our enterprise. And we don't need voter approval for our enterprise. But once we sign those contracts on that loan, we are stuck. No really council after us can change that. To borrow $150 million at roughly 5% interest will cause principal and interest payments of $12 million a year. We sell roughly 6 million kilogallons, that's the unit to measure water in, a year. So if we sell 6 million kilogallons and we have principal and interest of $12 million, that means water has to pay $2 per kilogallon. We are already paying horrifically higher water prices than our neighboring cities around us. Broomfield, Fort Collins, Pueblo, all pay less than $4 a thousand. Next year, we're going to pay $7.08. $7.08, $3 a gallon, $3 per kilogallon higher than that. I moved to a green, wonderful suburb. That's what I want. Green, beautiful, uncrowded, safe, with open space. How can people water their lawns if water's double what other people pay? The answer is they can't. You already see it in the cities. You see the abandoned landscapes in neighborhoods. How does that impact the neighborhood? Terribly. That's how it impacts it. And it also leads in people's minds that this isn't a safe place. I don't want to live here. Water needs to be for everyone, not just the affluent. And we're on a path where water and beautiful landscapes are only for the affluent. And I cannot tell you how angry I am about that. 2 years ago, we were promised lower water rates by the winning candidates. 6 people on that council at one time or another had said that they wanted lower water rates. Some for working people, but I think everyone works. It's time to stop the cliff and fall off. I please ask for your vote
Thank
for
you.
myself, Christine, and Scott.
Thank you very much. Scott?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Schilling. And to give you a brief history of myself, I worked the first 20 years of my career, I worked for this guy named Ross Perot. And Ross Perot was his entire organizations, he beat it into our heads to operate in the zone of white. Never in the black, never in the gray. Always honest, integrity, etc. And part of my job at the time was we would go in and rescue companies that had gone bad. We rescue IT departments and whatnot. And so during my career, all I learned about was how to come up with creative solutions to turn things around, to make things better. Okay, and that's what we did. That's what I've learned. I've taken my financial background, my IT skills, my economic skills, and done that. I then took those same thoughts and philosophies and became president of a large HOA down in Littleton, which had failed. And they failed for a variety of reasons. One, there was rules that they couldn't get around. Same thing we have here with crime. Rules that seem to overwhelm and we can't get around. So with creative thinking, I turned the HOA around. It went from having $122 in the bank. 1 year later, we had $85,000 in the bank, and it didn't cost the citizens of that HOA an extra penny. So that's what I look at. I look at financials. I pay attention to financials. I want to know what they're all about. They need to make sense. The water makes no sense. I need to get another viewpoint on this stuff, or it just doesn't make sense. Some of the stuff that also doesn't make sense. In 5 years, we went from 1 FTE, a full-time employee, to 125 residents. We're now down to 1 employee per every 100 residents. Why? Why? What benefit did that increase in FTEs do, okay? Another thing that bugs the crap out of me is all of the crime and this homeless stuff, okay? And I want to address it. I want to address it very aggressively. But then I continue to learn, like, oh, but they've got this law, and we got that law, we can't do it. Folks, there are ways. We've got to be creative, clever, intelligent members of this council to push through and resolve some of these problems, particularly in the southern part of Westminster.
Thank you. Paul?
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to take a minute first to introduce myself. My name is Paul Page, and as you all know, I'm a candidate for the Westminster City Council. I'd like to begin by thanking the Heart of Westminster for hosting, along with the Jefferson County League of Women Voters for moderating. But most importantly, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today to learn about myself as a candidate, along with the rest of us that are here that all want to serve you. Just so you know, I've been fortunate enough to have grown up in Colorado. I grew up in Boulder. For the last 23 years, I've lived here in Westminster, in this wonderful town. My wife, Margaret, and I currently own and operate Mad Rabbit Distillery here in Westminster, so I'm a business owner in the state. I have a common sense approach to what I think this city needs, and what I believe we need is to restore community in Westminster. And what I mean by that is community is different for everybody. I have a common sense approach to do this, to where I will collaborate with the other city officials in order to encourage these builders to start building, instead of these mega apartments, to actually start building community with affordable homes that people can build their own equity in, as opposed to for what the builders are building for themselves. I can also do this, so we'll collaborate with other people for that. I have, excuse me, I think everybody's getting a little bit nervous up here, especially myself. Compassion for what we're going to do as we build out our policies that affect not only ourselves but our neighbors. So when we're crafting our public policy, I will do that with compassion. And then also, I'll be committed to balance the needs of the city in order to maintain our water and sewer systems, while also being mindful for our residents' monthly budgets. That's going to be important. I have actually run for a position before, which was for the Highland Hills Park and Recreation District. I did lose that election by 1 ballot, but as you can see, I'm actually still here. I'm committed, have my desire to still serve my community. I'm in a position in my life where I can do that, and I would be honored to have your vote in order to serve you, the community, and the residents of Westminster. I'm gonna make up a little extra time for the people that went over and yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Pegg, and I'm running for Westminster City Council. I'd like to thank you all for coming here to hear what we have to say and ask us your questions on this Saturday. I am running to help ensure that Westminster is welcoming to individuals and families at all stages of life. I have heard a lot from you, my neighbors, when I'm out knocking doors, in particular about the high cost of housing, worries about community safety, and a desire to improve our parks and open space. I think I have the background to address all of these for you. I served on the board of directors of a nonprofit makerspace that required us to balance our members' desire for new capabilities against our need to maintain our existing machines and to keep the lights on. We were able to find innovative business solutions that welcome new members and well, kept the business afloat. I would like to, I work as an engineer, which means that I take some time to understand my clients' goals. Then I help them understand all the trade-offs in the design process, And finally, I guide them to solutions which balance short-term needs, long-term needs, and practical constraints. I will bring the same focused problem solving to Westminster City Council for you. I am optimistic that we can invest in community safety, improve our parks, preserve our open space, and address the housing crisis in a way which is sustainable, financially responsible, and makes Westminster an even better place to live. I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. Rich?
Thank you. I'm Rich Seymour, and I too am an open book. It's all recorded, it's all online every Monday night, but I am a Colorado native. I grew up in North Glen. I went to University of Northern Colorado where I met my wife. Thank God that was a very good thing for me because I would not be here today without her. We have 3 kids that we raised here in Westminster. We chose to make Westminster our home about 34 years ago. And we have 4 grandkids that all live within 10 minutes of us. So those are my top priorities right there. And so then I'm a local business owner. I'm a local advocate. I encourage you to go to my website, rich4westy.org, to see my resume of those things that I have had an effect on in our city, because I think it's more important to hear your questions today than to go through my resume. But I want to talk about the job of a city councilor. 4 years ago is very different for me sitting up here as well too, throwing out conjecture and thoughts. It's different when you're in the job. It's like all of us. You know, wait until you walk in someone's shoes. And so I've had that opportunity. I've learned from those that are on council, whether I agree with them or disagree with them, how you make good policy, how you collaborate, and how you work together to get things done for all of our residents. Our city's approaching 40% open space. In this last council, we agreed that we had opportunities to add more open space, and we did. It's small slivers, but that protects parts of our lands, our trails, and our parks that are #1 in our residents' hearts in every survey that we do. The second thing in that survey that's critical from hearing from residents every 2 years is they want a safe city to live in. Our council, just this last year, have passed ordinances and made budget changes to give our police department the opportunity to do what they do best, police. So we have mental health co-responders, we have homeless navigators, and we have report writers and a parking enforcement group, which we'll talk about that later maybe. But whether you agree with me or disagree with me, and I see many friends around this room, I'm always available. I'm always available for coffee. You know where to find me. I'm Rich Seymour. I appreciate you. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. All right, we're going to do the questions next, and I'm going to have people hand me categories of questions so that we'll go from there. Our first question, we'll start with Karen and work our way around the table to Rich, and then come up over here and start with Christine and work our way to Amber on this question. Wards or districts is on the ballot as an issue. Is this change something that the city needs right now? Will it benefit the neighborhood?
One of the things I like about Westminster is that the city council members are all at large and do not represent distinct districts. I think the big issue has been in Westminster that the south part of town has been left with the dregs of city council decisions. And that's unfortunate because I think the south side of town has probably the most character of all of Westminster as far as its residents and businesses and just pure history. So I think it's very unfortunate that this part of town seems to have been underrepresented, but I do not see a solution for having wards. I see that in Denver, and what's happening in Denver in districts represented by city council people is that they focus on their little district and everything else becomes secondary. It's not a holistic approach, and I think Westminster has a more holistic approach with the city council at large members.
Thank you. Bruce?
Thank you. I am absolutely in favor of wards, but you got to define what a ward is. And that's the important part, and that was the really disappointing part of this advisory question we're asking the people is, do you want wards? Sure, but what does that mean? I like wards, but only the people who live in the ward should vote for the candidate. Then there will be only one candidate and send a clear message. That really candidate will represent the ward. I can't tell you how many times people have called up and said, are you my representative? And I laugh and say, we're all your representative, which means you have no representatives, okay? It would make the campaigns much more affordable and much more doable for people, because a lot of us walk those ballots from door to door. And when you have 48,000 residences and 30,000 households, it's difficult. So I'm for wards.
Thank you. Scott?
So when it comes to wards, I'm just coming up to speed on what a ward really is and the multiple variants of what wards really are. And the more I learn about them, the more I'm for them. Like Bruce said, you know, it kind of depends on what the situation with that particular ward is. So right now, my vote is yes, wards, but I'm going to listen to the alternate arguments of not having wards, but I'm going to tend more towards wards right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
So what I've learned about wards during my research is that there are people for and people against. Personally, I think it would be beneficial to have wards so that we get more representation across the entire city, as opposed from just one lopsided end of town. I do agree that people down south don't have the representation that I think that they want, need, and deserve. Partially because of the people that have the time and the money to go out and campaign and represent everybody at large. So I do believe that wards would be good, perhaps even a split ward to where it's partially at large and partially set up for a ward district. I think it'd be beneficial for the residents. I also agree that it'll help for campaigning, and if you can get somebody from your district in a ward, your area of town that represents you, you know your area best, I think that that would be beneficial. So I'm in favor of wards in a particular split way.
Thank you. Tim?
Yes, I think we should have a ward system. Like others have pointed out, there are questions about exactly how we should shape that ward system. Should the mayor be the only at-large elected official? Should we have maybe one or two councilors who are also at large? Those are good questions, and we need to have a collaborative approach to defining precisely what a ward system would look like. Thank you.
Rich?
Thank you. I'm in favor of what the residents of Westminster want on this current upcoming ballot. If you want wards, then I will work hard to get that defined, and it's by 2026. Personally, I believe we should have a hybrid system. Running at large has really made a difference in my life, learning about what's important to you from 148th to 72nd and from both counties. It's been an incredible experience my last 5 years of doing this. And so, but I also believe that if we create a ward system, I agree that just the people that live in the ward should vote for that person. Because if you do like the counties do and you have to live in an area, but you run county-wide, it kind of dissolves that representation. So wards, yes, if the residents prefer a hybrid where there's at-large and wards. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
So this is why I'm in favor of wards. If you haven't noticed, there's been plenty of candidates in Westminster that just moved into our city. We don't know who they are. They spend a ton of money. They get elected. They move on to a higher office. This stuff has to quit. It's not representing you. The hybrid situation that my husband and I are analyzed to do was 5 councilors that are in wards. So we split the city into 5 wards, 2 in Jefferson County, 3 in Adams County, and then there's 3 at large. So every election cycle, it'll either be those city councilors that are at large for election, and the next one will be the wards for election. So we figured out the system that would make it easiest for it to reenacted and wouldn't cause so much disruption with elections. So if you have any questions on it, I have the whole plan with me afterward. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire?
Yes, in general, I believe that wards promote equity, and I believe that they also promote accessibility for the candidates who may want to run. It is a very large hurdle having to run at large, especially for those of us who are still have a career. And so unless you have enough money that you aren't currently working, or unless you're retired, this can be quite cumbersome thing to do, to run at large. And I think that it would provide the opportunity for more of our residents to be able to run if there were wards. With that said, I do think it relies heavily on the community deciding what those wards look like to ensure that that representation exists. With that, I'll add as well, there are parts of the city that are more heavily Spanish-speaking. What would it take to get a bilingual representative up here? It would probably take wards.
Thank you. Jeff?
I am also in favor of wards. I'm in favor of the voters deciding if they would like wards, not a specific plan that here's the plan we're going to do, this is what I designed. That's what I'm not in favor of. Let the voters decide if they want wards and how that will be done. I am in favor of wards in particular neighborhoods to get that input from those areas, like in historic Westminster. The danger to that is getting people to run in those wards. What would happen if nobody ran? That's the reason that we need to take some time to work this through and not rush it. The first question should be, do you want wards? And then the second question should be, what kind of wards would you like? And take it from there. Not, this is the ward system, this is how it's going to work, vote for this. That's what I'm not in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this time we're going to start with Rich. And, oh, I'm sorry. Amber, I am so sorry. I don't know where my mind is. I marked you down and then went on.
I do think it matters what the voters say, but I am also in favor of wards. I think it would be good to have a system where we have wards, but we also have people at large, so everybody is being represented. It is a lot more expensive to run at large than running in a ward, which means more people would be able to run. I'm sure we have some people in our community that would make fantastic candidates, but they don't have the financial means to run, but they would be able to if we had a ward. The way our system currently is, it's really set up for people in the middle class to be able to run, and we need representation for more than just the middle class. I do think it would encourage more people to run if we did have wards, because it would provide more opportunity. And so I am in favor of wards.
Thank you, and my apologies. All right, the next round, we will start with Rich and work our way back towards me. And the question is, the homeless population has had a negative impact on South and Westminster. What should the city be doing to help this area?
Thank you. Great question. I'm glad that came up. The city council, regardless of what people tell you, when you get sworn in, you swear that you will uphold the laws of the United States and the Constitution of the U.S. So, dealing with homelessness, unfortunately, gets clouded when the Ninth Circuit Court tells cities that you cannot arrest people for being homeless, you cannot ticket them for being homeless, and you cannot detain them because they have rights as citizens in our country. It's extremely frustrating, and the Supreme Court has said, we don't want to hear that case, which means it's the law of the land. So then we bring on mental health co-responders, we bring on homeless navigators, we have a budget to have beds available, because if you have a bed available, you can offer them services. If they decline, then you can move them. But it's a process, unfortunately, and I refuse to be part of violating the Supreme Court or the Constitution of the U.S.
Thank you. Tim?
So I think we need to take a multi-pronged approach to homelessness in Westminster. Data shows that the biggest driver of homelessness is high rents. So a lot of folks on the campaign trail have told me it's actually the #1 issue I've heard about, the high cost of housing here in Westminster. We need to work on that. Some of those folks have drug addiction problems and mental health problems. We need to seek out efficient ways to use our resources to help them get the help they need. And I think those are the two most important prongs to that approach.
Thank you. Paul?
I thought a lot about homelessness, and it's really easy for all of us to sit in this room or to sit at home and think of how compassionate we want to be, and we should be, and how we all want to help and we all want to do our part, until you see a tent or a tarp in your backyard or in your neighborhood. And then people got to search their souls and say, you know what, I really don't like that here and I want them out, I want them gone. I think what we need to do as a community is to realize that there is a problem. It's growing every day. It's, you can see it in depth in our surrounding communities, especially in downtown Denver. And it's bound to come here as a full-fledged problem sooner than later. I think I like what the city is doing with homeless outreach. I think it's something that's important for us to do, but more importantly is for us to find out what the cause is, mental health, and not just the effects of it, which is people living in communities under tarps or using drugs and being what we would consider a burden. So I think it's important that we all stick together to find a solution.
Yeah, the homeless issue, as I've come to understand it, is in reality about 10 to 20% of those we call homeless are actually homeless. The other 70% or so are folks that are just basically, that's the lifestyle they choose. I would push to say they're more like vagrants. And unfortunately, I want to find some way, okay, like I said, I like to come up with creative solutions. I want to help those that are homeless, 10%, 20%. And the rest, I want to figure out how we can drive them out of the community. Because somebody living in a tent next to your yard is just not going to work. We have to come up with creative solutions to get them moved out. Thank you.
Bruce?
Homeless is the wrong label. Trespassing is the right label. And trespassing, you can exercise our law enforcement capabilities on. And that's what we should do. About 3 months ago, a year and a half ago, council tried to use the continuum of compassion. And we went from spending $400,000 a year to $1 million a year. And we got an extra navigator, and we got some park rangers, and nothing worked. Because we didn't address the problem, which is trespassing. No one should be able to camp when camping is done. No one should poop in public. And we need to fairly and vigorously enforce those laws, and I think we would be really sustained in a court.
Thank you. Aaron?
I have to agree with Tim on this, that, again, I see a lot of the homelessness situation having started after the recession, which again, I believe was partly caused by that housing and the banking industry. And a lot of people lost their homes during the 2012 era. And again, when they they lost their homes, they went to rent, and the rents are allowed to go 20% or more high renewal rates every year. And people just can't keep up with that, and that was the cause of a lot of the homeless situation, which just keeps on getting worse. And I think that South Westminster gets the brunt of it, partly because the buses come from downtown Denver and end up right around 72nd. So that's a big reason for South Westminster having that problem.
Thank you.
In 2010, I was here living in Westminster and I became homeless. I could no longer afford my apartment. I was not a trespasser. I could not afford my apartment. I was working. I was working full-time hours, and I was homeless. We do need to provide services for people who are homeless. It's not a choice for many people. It was not a lifestyle choice for me. It was a very, very hard time. I have 3 children. I was a homeless mother of 3 children. That was not a lifestyle choice. And I am proof of what happens when we have a responsible government that takes care of their people, because I would not be here today without it. So we need to provide people the resources that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
I believe this is more than just a community issue. I believe it should be a state, both counties, and a municipal issue, and even a federal issue. I believe that there's a difference between a hand up and a handout, and we should help everybody that needs both. A hand up to get on their feet, to find housing, to find medical attention, to find food. Let's help them. But there has to be a certain point where those that don't want that hand up or they want a continuous handout, we have to be a little bit more stronger in those terms. I've walked many neighborhoods, many doors. This is a big issue. A lot of people want their parks back. They want their open space back. A lot of business owners want their bathrooms back. They want their front of their businesses back. And this is a two-pronged issue. The trouble is it's all political. We've got to be able to sit down as a state and as counties and as a city to all of us work it out. It just can't be this one city.
Thank you. Claire?
Speaking as a formerly unhoused person who comes from an unhoused family, I would caution against suggesting to know why families become homeless. In that, I believe that there are solutions that we can come up with, such as finding areas for RVs to park in the city, having affordable hookups for water and sewage for RVs, as I was helping a friend recently find somewhere to legally park. Many unhoused are living in their cars or on our RVs. I think we can partner with the county. I recently did a tour with Adams County Human Services to find out what solutions and what is available to the community. I think we can do a better job of connecting with them and using those resources. And I think we can take a book out of partnering with organizations that already provide solutions, such as St. Francis's Church. How can the city better do outreach with these organizations?
Thank you. Christine?
So I've seen the homelessness, I've read about it. I don't want us to become the next San Francisco, the next Casper, Wyoming, where the homeless have more rights than the taxpayers. There is plenty of ideas how to deal with it. Other areas of our metro area are outlawing tents and blankets in their cities, and it is effective. I think her idea of RV park might be great for some who really want to make their life better. I am into self-reliance. I've taught classes on self-reliance, budgeting, how to write a resume, how to make your life better. Those kind of people, I am more than willing to help. But those that choose to be homeless, I don't think that they should have more rights than you.
Thank you. All right, this time we will start with Bruce and work our way that way and come back around. All right. Westminster's general fund capital infrastructure is aging and will warrant more repairs and replacement, which exceeds 10 to 15 million. How would you pay for these costs?
Capital expenses is one of the major ingredients of the city budget, okay? But it's when do you replace? And that is the key. And when do you add new items? Here's a tangible, fixed example. In 2016, we decided to spend $20 million, which turned out to be $23 million on a biosolids dewatering plant. Okay, it's amazing I think about this stuff. And it was unnecessary. It was absolutely unnecessary. The savings of it was $200,000 a year, and this was in transportation costs, because instead of taking liquid waste from our sewage plant, we turned them into sort of a cake and took the cake so we didn't have to make as many trips. But it was a foolish expenditure, and that's why we're in the hole on capital costs.
Thank you. Scott?
So in my opinion, capital expenditure is fine, as long as what you're spending the capital improves the well-being of the citizens of Westminster. So if it improves the well-being of the citizens, great. If not, I don't want to see it. You know, we want to spend capital expenditure where it's needed to repair, maintain, things of that nature. If it's a big capital expenditure, I'm just going to put it on the ballot and say, okay, citizens, vote, okay? Vote on this dude. Do you want to spend an extra $50 each per year? Do you want to spend an extra $200 a year in taxes to pay for this that I might find to be unnecessary? So for me, capital expenditure depends on what you're spending it on. It depends on the benefit to the citizens that they're going to get out of it. So that's what I'll focus on.
Thank you. Paul?
Capital expenditures, boy, in this economy, I don't think anybody wants to hear that. Because the only place that you can really get that money, if you haven't already budgeted for it, is by raising taxes. I think the best way to fund a project, if you can, is to, one, do an analysis to decide do you need it in the first place. Wasteful spending is just that, it's wasteful. If we need something, it should be analyzed, and it should be budgeted for. If it's something that's going to be an additional cost that's above and beyond what is in the city's budget already, it should go to the voters so that they can decide if they want to spend that. Because it's your hard-earned dollars that are the ones paying for it. If you have to pick between a tank of gas, which is obscene right now, or a new pet project for the city, I would want to make sure that you have that money to put gas in your car so that you can actually go out and buy your groceries, which are ridiculous right now, as opposed to something that the city may or may not need and was or was not budgeted for. So cut cost, do a budget, and then worry about the capital expense.
Tim?
I cannot undo previous capital expenditures. All we can do is look forward. 70% of the city's revenue comes from sales tax. One option that I think we should look at carefully is how to encourage more businesses to move to Westminster so we can increase our sales tax revenue.
Thank you. Rich?
Well said. It's absolutely correct. That's where most of our budget comes is from sales tax, so we get an opportunity for those people visiting here to pay part of the infrastructure that they use. Capital improvements is day-to-day life living. City government, county government affects you every day from the moment you get up till you go to sleep. It's your water, your sewer, your curbs, gutters, and it's the capital buildings that we have, many of them that were built in the 1980s as our city exploded, and they are wearing out. And so it's important that council looks to that and every year look at that budget and say, what do we need to improve now? Because the cost of repairing some of these now is more than the building of that. How you finance that, do you really want to vote on every street, gutter, and curb? I think not. That's why you elect people. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
So we have wasted so much money on big capital projects, one being the new downtown. You know, that's cost the taxpayers over $100 million, and we will never recoup it. Just over and over, things like that. $43 million for a new courthouse. You know that we only have 8,000 cases that go through that courthouse a year, and they're mostly traffic tickets. I think there's better creative ways to deal with traffic tickets than spend $43 million on a new courthouse. By the way, you did not even get to vote on it. They found a loophole to not put it on the ballot. These things are happening over and over in our city, and that's why I'm running for office, because I am sick of the wasteful spending.
Claire?
I think this topic brings me back to why it is so important to focus on a strong local economy and finding the efficiencies and incentives on how to do that. That will provide the surplus we need to ensure we have a strong economy. I do want to add that as any strong project manager does, you do the ROI analysis first, like we mentioned on the projects, and you trust and you listen to your city staff who really know their stuff, and you take that feedback and you go forward and decide on which projects are the most valuable to the community. But with a strong local economy, we can do more.
Thank you. Jeff?
I would agree. A strong economy would help a lot when you're paying for capital improvements. But first, it's a budget. You have to have a budget for the city, and top priority has to be core services first. From there, capital improvements. Things break down. Things get old. As an example, the water treatment plant. That process started in 2014. Looking ahead till 2025, that's where it was projected. You have to have city leaders and city staff that can try to project what those capital improvements will be, and then based on the money you have, you can decide on what to spend that capital improvements on. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
I do agree that we need a strong economy to be able to pay for what we need, but how are we going to have a strong economy if it's unaffordable to live here? If people don't have extra income to spend at the businesses in Westminster, how are we going to have a strong economy? So we need to make sure that we're taking care of the people, of our residents. We need to focus on housing costs. We have 10 times the amount of seniors that qualify for affordable units than we have units in Westminster. How does that provide a strong economy when people can't afford to live here? So I think that we need to address a lot of our issues, one of them being housing. We need to address the costs, and we need to take care of our residents. That's how you build an economy. The people is what run the economy. And if we're not taking care of the people, we're not going to have a strong economy.
Thank you. Erin?
The capital improvements is a big, big issue because, for instance, this water treatment plant is so far out of whack, $150 million or so, and that's only half of what we supposedly are going to need, because consultants, in my mind, have created a problem rather than addressed a problem. We should not be taking a beautiful piece of land where the butterfly pavilion is. By the way, the butterfly pavilion is one of Westminster's big attractions, and we're going to get rid of that to build a water treatment plant that only had one consultant designing it. There are all sorts of ways of designing projects that fit a need that can be done efficiently or inefficiently, and a huge capital improvement expense is being devoted to the water treatment plant, which is complete waste, in my opinion.
Thank you. All right, Claire, you will begin with our next set of questions, and we'll work our way back to Christine going that way. Okay, the question is, do you think the city needs more affordable or high-density housing, and where should it be built?
I don't think it's a question of does it. The fact of the matter is that the available housing currently, I think it's less than a few percent. It's extremely low, so that essentially there really is no affordable housing for folks at the moment. If they would like to downsize, if you're a senior and you'd like to downsize, from what I've heard from neighbors, they would have to move out of state to afford that. And of course, for young families starting out. So I don't think it's a question of if, it's where, right? And so I think it's important to plan smart, plan responsibly, because we do want to protect our lands, especially those lands that are currently undeveloped, and plan that around transit. Where can we put it so that maybe parking is not required, so that we can hopefully take a strong look at congestion, how to reduce that while planning smart. But every new development should have sprinkled in a percentage of affordable housing. I think that is just a must.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yes, I would agree with affordable housing, especially for young people who are trying to get into the housing market. We need that. High-density housing, yes, we have too much of that. I believe that we need to work with developers to try to work that problem out. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is the city has a plan, 2040 comprehensive plan that includes land use. And in that plan, it specifically states where specific areas of land can be developed and how it can be developed, meaning homes. And if you try to not allow certain development, there's a litigation part to that. where the city can be sued for that. So I think we're all for affordable and attainable housing and too much high-density housing, but you got to be real careful and work both sides of that and work with developers. They also have to try to make a profit also, and I think we need to try to do both there. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
Yes, so housing here, if you're trying to buy a house, it starts at $500,000, and it just goes up from there. And there are not very many houses on the market for $500,000. I don't know who can afford that. What we don't have in Westminster is a lot of that missing middle housing. I mean, duplexes, fourplexes, they can be built in such a way that they look like single-family homes, that they can mix in with single-family home neighborhoods and still, fit. We need to look at, you can even build condos in a way that it looks like a giant house. There are ways that you can build homes that we don't currently have at price points we don't currently have. And when we have homes at diverse home prices, that means we have a diverse population, which in turn makes our economy diverse, which helps our economy. And when we are able to get people into homes, it means that there's less demand on rentals, and it brings down the cost of rentals, so it helps everyone.
Thank you.
There are specific places where I think high-density housing, which is going to be more affordable just by nature of utilities brought in and materials used, high-density housing can accommodate some needs, and I would suggest that the new downtown is a very suitable place for that kind of high-density housing that would theoretically be more affordable. But it will only be affordable if the builders are required to have at least 15% of those units be affordable. Given on their own, these developers are never going to do that. It has to be enforced. But this idea of taking every available piece of land, for instance, the uplands, that was billed as in the middle housing. And those units are going to be 500,000 to 1 million, even in their dense form. So just making things dense is not the same as making them affordable.
Thank you. Bruce?
If I could ask, would you repeat the question, the original question?
Of course.
I think we've drifted.
Do you think the city needs more affordable or high-density housing, and where should it be built?
Okay. No, I don't. The only affordable housing in this city is the owner-occupied housing. Rental housing will never be affordable. It'll always be market rate. They're going to charge everyone. If you want affordable housing, you could go to, let me see, Janesville, Wisconsin, where the average price of a house is $140,000. We can't control the market as a city. We can't do that. And the affordable housing we build is so minuscule, is so tiny, that it's a lottery system. I remember when Adams County gave us a presentation, they had built something like 500 homes, and it was 150 homes, and they had 4,000 qualified applicants. 3,850 people got the short end.
Thank you. Scott?
Okay, the concept of high-density housing and affordable housing is a serious conundrum. Bringing in more and more high density, okay, to me, just brings more and more high density and more crime. And those people that are renting these places, they're renting. They're not getting any kind of equity whatsoever. At the same time, I was just in Gunnison the other day, and they built a bunch of, low-income houses, 1,400 square feet for $450,000. Are you kidding me? So if we built a whole bunch of 1,400 square foot houses for $400,000 apiece, that's not low-income housing, okay? And bringing on high-density housing anymore isn't going to solve that problem, okay? Because the high-density stuff is still pretty expensive. So I wouldn't introduce much more, if any, additional high-density housing. We have other things to think about.
Thank you.
So my position on this is pretty clear. I'm not a fan of high-density housing. My platform for running for city council is to restore community in Westminster. You can't do that when you have a bunch of apartments that are cluttering up the space. If you're living in an apartment which is costing you more than it would cost you to own a home, depending upon our interest rates, you can't actually build a community where you actually know your neighbors. For those of the people in the room, I know that all know each other. You know yourselves or know your neighbors because of the housing structure that we have. And it's not built on apartments, it's built on homes where you can build home equity, build your future, know your neighbors, know your community. That's what's important to me. I don't think we need any more high-density apartments, not only because of the lack of community that it creates, but because of the burden that it puts on the city and the city's infrastructure, which is a big problem that we have right now with our water and city in the first place, or water and sewer in the first place.
Thank you. Tim?
I will say that if we build high-density housing, the right places to build it are our 3 transit-oriented developments to minimize the traffic impacts of the folks who live there. That being said, we should not be selling off any of our public open space to build new housing.
Rich?
City has never sold public open space for housing, ever. The spaces that are open that are being built on right now are owned by individuals who have the right to sell that to a willing buyer. We have to define high density as well, because that's become a bit of a buzzword. We have people that believe that anything less than a house on 1.5 acres is high density. There's a little bit of something for everyone. I believe that we should create opportunities as we can and let the market drive the prices. The only thing that drives prices down is availability. We are short in housing across the entire country from the economic collapse in 2008. And so we have to be able to find ways for people to have condominiums, townhomes, paired homes, whatever you want to fit the budget. And our state legislature keeps blocking us because we have construction defects laws in this state that keep us from building everything.
Thank you. Christine?
I'm against high-density housing. You know that our city, it's 20th in the nation for suburbs for building apartments. And we're also the highest rent payments in the entire state. So how has this high-density housing made housing more affordable? It hasn't. There's plenty of vacancies downtown and other places. We have plenty of apartments for people to live in, but at $2,000 a month, they're not living in them. We have a bigger problem nationally. We have corporations buying up single-family homes. That is why there's no single-family homes, because we cannot compete with corporations to buy a home. If you walk neighborhoods, you'll learn that lots of them are rentals anymore because corporations own them. It is a national problem, and don't let anyone say otherwise.
Thank you. All right, our next question is, speeding on our streets, running red lights, street racing, is this a problem? If so, what solutions do you propose? And we'll start with Tim.
You start. Sorry about that.
Yes, traffic safety is extremely near and dear to my heart. I bike to work every day. I take this concern very seriously. I will say that there is a growing body of research about how to manage traffic safety in a way that is frankly not terribly expensive. And I think we need to work with city staff to talk about opportunities to do that.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a problem. It's a very sad reality post-COVID where lawlessness moved over to speeding and car thefts and all those issues. We all see it every day. People passing you on the turn lanes. Yeah, I too ride, but I won't go near a street. It's just too crazy out there. We see cars are safer now, but the deaths per mile driven has gone up the last 5 years because people are looking at their screen like that on top of it. Our new police chief, Halbert, has taken what he's heard from council over and over again. We now have our traffic officers back on the streets. And in a recent week, our officers issued 251 traffic citations. This is not an income generator. This is about changing behavior, and our police are taking seriously. We need a few more police, and we're trying to solve that issue too.
Thank you. Christine?
I do think it's an issue. I hear them every night out on Huron by my house. So I'm glad that the police are issuing tickets, and maybe we'll make a difference there. And I'm open to suggestions when I'm on city council as to how to solve the problem.
Thank you. Claire?
I will echo what everyone has said. It is absolutely a problem. From the doors I've knocked within neighborhoods, I've heard many residents suggest that they may need more speed bumps or they may need more stoplights coming into their neighborhoods, and so I'd like to take a look at that. I live off of 92nd, and I am a light sleeper, and so in March, I recently invested in all new windows because I didn't see the problem changing anytime soon. And that was an almost $11,000 solution to help quiet my house so I can sleep at night. So I just want everyone to know that this impacts me directly. It impacts a lot of the residents I've talked to. And I think that we can, on council, support the police department to get the staff that they need to ensure that we are, taking care of this problem. And I just want to acknowledge that I have seen over the last week, I have seen a lot of officers out there pulling folks over, so I'm hopeful that the culture will change.
Thank you. Jeff?
Well, yes, why wouldn't I agree with this? I used to supervise the traffic unit a long time ago, so I strongly believe that it is a problem. It continuously will be a problem, the way people drive. There are so many more people and cars that come to this area in this state. And you need a strong, good traffic unit. We have a good one. The trouble is that we, for a period of time, lost many officers due to the negative aspects given towards police officers and other factors. Now they have risen in the ranks, and hopefully they can continue to do that. They're still short somewhat, but they will take anybody's suggestion. If you have a particular problem in your area, I'm a strong believer in that, even on council. We need to bring those ideas of enforcement, and that needs to continue to happen daily and nightly also.
Amber?
Yes, it is an issue. It's a safety issue. I live off 88th. I hear them all the time. I worry about people who are on the road trying to get home. I worry about my kids driving home from work when they get off work late, because sometimes I want to text them and be like, be careful coming home, because I can hear the street racers. It's a safety issue, and so I will work with the other members of council, work with our police department to find the best solutions, because it absolutely needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, I live near Highway 36, and yeah, Fridays and Saturday nights, I hear the drag racers. I don't know what the solution is. It seems to be a form of self-expression for a lot of people to drive like that. So how do you curb that? I'm not quite sure, but it does need to be addressed. It is a safety issue. It's a noise issue. But I think it's a symptom, maybe, of some other things that people feel the need to express themselves in that way. And I really don't get it, but I do have to put up with it.
Thank you. Bruce?
It was here really yesterday, it's here today, it'll be here tomorrow. We just have to keep working on it.
Scott?
I'd like to go about it in a kind of a two-pronged approach. I've had the great fortune of living in a variety of countries throughout my life. I lived in England for 2.5 years, and one of the things that struck me about living there was the drivers. They had a great sense of community and keeping the roads moving and going and moving and going. So for my two-pronged approach, I'd like to see an effort by the city to push the fact that you're sharing the road and be smart and reasonable what you're doing. The second prong of this approach would be go aggressively after the street racers and people that are just violating things. But two-pronged approach, education on sharing the road, being responsible, to forcing the laws. Thank you.
Great. Paul?
So I have a unique perspective on this. I have a commercial driver's license and I drive a big box truck almost 3 times a week doing deliveries for business. So being up in the big box truck, I actually get to see something you guys don't, and it's the donut tracks in the middle of the street where these guys are actually doing 360s. I don't know when they're doing it, but they're certainly occurring. And I see them on more and more streets as I'm driving around. I've also almost been driven off the road from a negligent driver while he was driving the big box truck, while he was on his phone, texting somebody, or I don't know what he's doing, ordering lunch, I don't know. Margaret, my wife, has almost been hit by a distracted driver while she was walking. She didn't have her earbuds in, she wasn't not paying attention. They just decided to do a California stop, which you all have probably seen is very common right now. What's a stop sign anymore? Nobody knows. So the way that there is a problem and the way we need to address it is with enforcement. I never thought I'd hear myself say it, but where's a cop when you need one?
Thank you. All right, I think this may be our final question. We'll see how the time goes on this. The city owns several vacant properties in this part of town, meaning the lower Westminster, I guess. What should they do with the rodeo building next door? And we will start with, oh,
Yeehaw, I love rodeos. You know what, so the city owns it. I hate seeing any historic building, any old building that's gonna be torn down and repurposed for something else. If it's just gonna be torn down for the sake of being torn down. I've never been to the rodeo building, I'll tell you that much. But as I mentioned, I can't see something that's gonna be taken from the city and turned into something that won't be beneficial for the residents. So my simple response to that is, the properties that the city owns, if I'm elected as city council member, would be to keep all those to the benefit of the residents.
thank you. Tim?
I think it's important that we get a tenant in the rodeo market. And that is because we have this small walkable arts district here, and that is a hole in the middle of that district, a rip in the fabric down here. I'm aware of some work to get a restaurant or a brewery in the rodeo market. I'd like to see that move forward, but frankly, that's dragged on for a long time. I think we need to talk about a faster process.
Thank you. Rich?
Thank you. When the city purchased the rodeo market, they made a commitment to the residents of our city to maintain and restore the history of that building. I have been in the rodeo market. I got to see the little marks on the wall in the back where Dino's grandfather made the marks as he was growing. Yes, Dino was that tall at one point. Hard to believe. I've been there for art exhibitions. I believe while it is a substantial expense now, that is a cost that we've taken on, and it is our due to maintain that, as any part of our history should be maintained. If we're able to bring in a viable economic driver for 73rd Avenue, I think that's critical. I was in favor of the brewery. Some wanted it, some didn't want it. I think we can find a way to do that and honor the history of the market. Some want to tear it down. I find that would be a great loss for our city.
Thank you. Christine?
Hello, I just got back from the East Coast where they repurposed historic buildings for everything. So I'm not into tearing it down, but I have heard bids to do the brewery or the restaurant is $2.9 million. That's another problem with our city. We are not getting bids for more than one outfit. We need 3 bids at least. When I was on HOA, we had at least 3 bids to do capital projects. Having 1 bid is not acceptable. So I think we need other bids and suggestions from the neighbors to figure out something economical that's actually going to make money, and so the taxpayers are not in the hole. And that's my feeling on it.
Thank you. Claire?
I do think it's important to protect and preserve historic buildings whenever and wherever feasible. It helps protect the culture of a community, and I think that that's important. As I've mentioned, I would like to see more community and family-friendly and neighborhood spaces in the city where we can meet our neighbors and be a more vibrant, healthy community where we know everyone in an area. And so I'd love to see it perhaps as a community space or something that can be used by all. As far as I know, Westminster doesn't have a real entertainment center, and so I think it'd be good to see it used for something that we can all go to regularly.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, I've been in the building many times. It is an historic building. I believe that we need to preserve historic buildings. A lot of times we tear down the past and put up the new. I am for that. I know that we're trying to look for some. It does just not take one bid. It takes developers that want to develop. They want to come to that building. And that's what we need to pursue as long as it's sustainable. We've got to make it something good for this community. And what can be sustainable, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I also agree that we need to preserve our historical buildings. But I also don't think this is a decision that I should be making. This is a decision that the community should be making. So I'm in favor of working with the community and working collaboratively and deciding, because I think the community should ultimately be the one to decide what happens to that building.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, I really think it's important to keep the culture of the community intact by maybe paying a little bit more to keep the historic buildings and the historic landscape intact. For instance, this historic part of Westminster should probably be granted special funds to keep it alive and going. Arvada makes a point of keeping their historical center alive and thriving. And that is due to special considerations, not just leftover whatever a developer wants to find profitable. They specifically put funds into their old downtown to make it viable, and it becomes a great commercial area because they're putting special effort into it. This dependency on corporations to take over blighted areas that the council has designated, for instance, South Down here, is shameful.
A building needs to be used. If a building isn't used, why do you want it? At really Schoenberg Farms, I mean, a very historic area, we got someone to promise us to take over and maintain these buildings, and we let them have it for $10. City, after spending, I think, $2 million, said you can have it for $10 as long as you follow through. I'd be more than happy to do that with, like, the rodeo. It'd be a wonderful thing to do. My concern is, after trying for multiple years, we can't find anyone to take over that white elephant. And sometimes in government, you have to make hard decisions. And I'd be willing to make the hard decision. Just like at Sheridan Green, we may have to make a very hard decision there.
Thank you.
Well, Bruce, you stole my thunder. You know, when it comes to buildings and historical buildings, you have to look at them seriously. If it's just rotting and falling apart, you know, and throwing 20 million or 10 million or 7 million just to bring it back up to speed so that you can have an art center or something along those lines, does it make sense? I personally would like to see it converted into an art center of some sort. Dance classes, art classes, woodworking classes for kids, and the things of that nature. I'd like to see that done, but I'd like to see what the costs are going to be. And if it requires a hard decision to sell it off for somebody to put in a small store or something like that, well then, those are hard decisions that sometimes need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's now time for our closing statements. You will each be given 1 minute, and we will start with Jeff.
Thank you. I'm in this for the good of Westminster. I'm not interested in any bigger political career. As I mentioned, Westminster has been a very big part of my life for a very long time. I care about its future. It's the life I chose for 40 years, public service. I will be fair, I will be ethical, I will be open and honest, and I work hard every day to serve the best interests of Westminster. I'm committed to working with others, even those who may have different opinions or positions on some issues. I definitely won't have to be formally censored for treating a member of city staff with dignity and respect. I know our city staff, and they are dedicated, committed, and work hard for this community, and it's the life they chose, public service. Thank you. My website is jonesforwestminster.com. I'm number 3 on your ballot, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Amber?
I'm running because I care about this community. I feel very lucky that I got to raise my kids here, and I am seeing people at all stages of life not be able to stay here. I'm seeing seniors having to leave an area that they have spent the majority of their life. I'm seeing children grow up and having to move away from their family and their support system because they can't afford to stay here. And we see young families moving away because they can't afford to stay here and raise their kids here. And we see that in our neighborhood schools closing. And so we have a lot of work we have to do, and I'm running because I care about our community, and I want to see people be able to raise it. This is a great place to raise a family. I want people to be able to do that if they want to raise a family. I want seniors to be able to downsize if they want to. I want people to be able to come here, live here, and start a life here when they become young adults. And so we have a lot of work to do, but I care very deeply about my community, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, I obviously hope you will vote for me in November. I have a lot of experience working with the built environment, but I also care a lot about nature, and that's one of my main concerns is to see the beautiful nature of Westminster, which make it very distinctive compared to some other communities. And what we're doing is turning Westminster into Denver, and I think that's a shame. I think that's a real shame, and we need to put special effort to protect our natural areas as well as to provide services for the existing residents and for some visitors. But I'm not sure that I think we need to make this available for everyone as much as protect it for its existing citizens and reasonable growth.
Thank you. Bruce?
We are on the edge. You have the destiny of this suburban city in your hands. The voters do. So are we going to be a really suburban city that like our cars and use our cars, and most of us own our homes, and there's not a great difference between the really affluent parts of town and the less affluent parts of town? Or are you going to let us take on enormous debt and divide into, the renters live here and blah, 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 blah. I don't want that. I want my suburb. I want my equal, fair, safe, equitable suburb, and I will fight to get that.
Thank you. Scott?
You know, as I've been campaigning, wandering around the city, talking with people, I have been getting an earful. Why? Why am I getting an earful? It's because the existing council must not be doing something right. Just doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. That's something that Einstein said, that's the definition of crazy. Doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. So it's time to do some changes here. Looking at financials, creating creative solutions, okay, but doing them differently, approaching homeless differently, approaching, affordable housing. Something different needs to occur. And that's what I'm going to focus on, identifying different kinds of solutions to make sure that our suburb remains a suburb. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out today to learn about myself and my campaign. My campaign is pretty simple. Again, it's about collaboration, compassion, and commitment. The one thing I didn't really hear today from the two distinct camps, the slates that are running, is about collaboration. I fall in the middle. If you elect me, what I'm going to do is collaborate with the other city officials, the other county council members, to do what you, the residents, want done. The only way that's going to happen is if you have an open mind and you're willing to work with other people to get it done. That's going to be my focus. I appreciate your coming again today. Please do your duty in November and vote, no matter who you vote for, but I do hope it'll be vote for me, Paul Page. Just remember, when you get your ballot, candidate number 8 is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you all for your questions today. What I heard today was a lot about community safety, and like I've said before, we need to invest in community safety. We need to make sure that people feel safe. That is a bedrock of making sure that we have a vibrant economy. And from there, we can work on making sure that everybody feels welcome here in Westminster, whether you are a senior looking to downsize or a young family who is having a hard time moving into the neighborhood, or even someone who's paying really high property taxes because your property assess is so high. We can work on that too. As far as collaboration, first thing an engineer does is they take the time to understand their client's interests. And then from there, they balance both the short-term and the long-term interests against the practical constraints. And again, I want to bring that same focused problem solving to Westminster City Council for you. I'm Tim Pegg, and I hope you'll vote for me in November.
Thank you. Rich?
Thank you. Thank you as well. The important role of local city government is very well defined, and the role of city council is defined as well. We have 3 employees, and we direct them. We hire a great city manager, which we have done, and we get out of their way and we talk about what's important 20 years from now, not about today and being in the weeds. I think rather than telling you about myself, I'll read a quote from a person that talks about me that maybe we don't always agree on things. Rich Seymour is a truly kind, considerate, and accommodating person. He has been recognized as Rotarian of the Year. He is a great asset to our committee. Rich and I were the point men on the 2022 lowering of water rates, and we opposed the high-density housing at Semper Gardens. But Rich does not have a hard edge. Thank you, Councilor Baker. I do not have a hard edge. Our residents don't want national politics. They want their residents to be heard.
Thank you. Christine?
Hello, I'm ready for city council, not because it's something that I aspire to, but it's because I don't like the direction of our city. I appreciate Bruce Baker, who has stood up against all the other city councilors, against all the high-density housing, all these crazy capital projects, against the new downtown. That is why I'm joined with him. He needs my support, and so that is why Scott joined with him too. We need 3 of us on there to make a difference. It's not one that can make a difference. As you know, Bruce has stood alone. He's voted against the Uplands project and all the other crazies that are going on in our city, and I join with him, and I hope we have your vote.
Thank you. Claire?
When it comes to electing local leadership, we're looking to elect responsible stewards who will make decisions based on community input, based on listening to the recommendations of staff, and based on life skills and experience. I have experience working in government. I understand its complexity, its constraints, its budgeting. I have experience working with stakeholder collaboration and with understanding budgets and timelines. And I have a lot of experience understanding the gaps in the most vulnerable in our community. I believe that being a council member is stewardship, and I promise to be an ethical and responsible steward of the city and for you.
Thank you, and thank you all for your participation today. We appreciate it very much. In addition to this forum, the League of Women Voters offers voters access to the free online election voters guide at vote411.org. It will be available October 9th. This interactive website provides voters the opportunity to compare candidates side by side for all races, along with pro and con arguments on all ballot initiatives that will appear on their ballots. We know that participation in local government by serving and/or voting is where we can express our collective values and protect and improve the quality of life for Westminster residents. So thank you for learning about the candidates and thank you for voting and participating. Election Day is November 7th. All active voters will be mailed a ballot the week of October 16th. For drop-off box locations as well as the nearest polling center, go online to Adams County or to jeffco.us/elections. If you choose to mail your ballot, be sure it's mailed early enough to arrive no later than 7 p.m. on November 7th. To be safe, consider mailing it on or before October 30th. Voter service and polling centers open October 30th. You can visit them to register to vote, update your registration, get a replacement ballot, and cast your vote, all the way up to Election Day. Questions concerning registration and ballot issues may be directed to the Jefferson County Clerk at 303-271-8111 or the Adams County Clerk at 720-523-6500. Thank you for participating today, and be sure to vote on November 7th.
Real quick, just a little bit more information here. Please give another big round of applause to Christina Manthe and the Jefferson County League of Women Voters. Just a quick reminder, we will be hosting the Westminster Public Schools Board of Education Candidate Forum this coming Wednesday, October 4th, here at the Grange Hall. The doors will open at 6:30. The forum begins at 7. Candidates, could you please stand? And let's give them a round of applause. And give yourselves a round of applause. Please stick around. There's plenty of pastries and coffees left, and visit with the candidates. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome.